Hey guys, Broheen here from the Gamers Emporium. How's it going with everybody in the Rift community these days? Hope you all are good. It's good to be somewhat back. I say somewhat back because I can't really get into Rift full time as of now. I'm just too busy with personal life and whatnot. But I'm hoping come December time, once I get moved and my hours at work change, and once I'm married in the beginning of November here. I'll be able to actually put out some more Rift content, especially because the fact Primalist is dropping soon. So I'm hoping to, get a jump on that when that comes out. So, but for now, I'm basically bringing you a guide. It caught my attention on the forums. Now, this guide was done by someone named Hababa. I'm not very familiar with them, but the guide was really good. And this guide is the 3.354 Harbinger. So we're going to talk about Harbinger, and the first thing I'd like to say about it is that Harbinger's come a long way from when Rift started with Harbinger, or I should say when Harbinger first started in Rift. It was very confusing. None of the buffs matched. All the timers on the buffs, I should clarify, they didn't really match up. I mean, they still really don't today, but with the little adjustments they've done since the launch of Harbinger, if you will, I think it's come a long way. And with the macros that Hababa has provided, that I'm going to show you and pass his great word along today with, we're going to cover it, and I think you're going to find out it's going to be a lot easier to play Harbinger this way. So let's jump right into it here. Alright, so the first thing we're going to go over is the soul tree, like normal, like the rest of my guides. So it's going to be 54 Harbinger, 8 Chloro, 14 Stormcaller. Not too much has changed as far as that goes, but we're going to put more points in Harbinger than the other builds that I did. So what we're looking at with a 54, put 5 in Eldritch Knowledge, 1 in Blazing Light, 5 in Nimble Blade, 2 in Natural Swiftness. You're going to have to put 5 in Magnetic Blade, then 1 in Piercing Beam to open Intensity. So put 3 in Intensity, 2 in Razor's Edge, 2 in Lightning Riposte, 2 in Eldritch Power, 2 in Vorpal Edge, 2 in Living Charge, 1 in Planar Retreat, 1 in Light Nova, 2 in Insult to Injury, 1 in Conditioned Response, 5 in Combat Mastery, 2 in Furious Assault, 2 in Desperate Response, 1 in Phase Step, 1 in Blade Mark, 3 in Rising Storm, 2 in Jagged Blades, and 1 in Reaper's Blade. Now, since we're right over here with the Blade Mark, this guide, because it's more of like a single target guide is what I'm doing here. So I'm not going to cover Blade Mark in this, but I may do an AoE Harbinger guide that will cover, all the AoE stuff in it, and with Blade Mark, obviously. So on the Chloromancer, put 5 in Natural Awareness and 3 in Nature's Corrosion. That makes the 8 there. In Stormcaller, we put the typical 5 in Storm Energy. Gotta have Living Storm. That'll play more of a role in the AoE. Again, not going to be used in this video. 5 in Cyclogenesis, 1 in Hailstorm, and 2 in Conductive Medium. Now your 61 is going to be Final Breath, 62 will be Rejuvenating Presence, 63 in Mental Cynosure, 64 in Sparking Destruction, and 65 in Arcane Manipulation. Alright, now let's take a look at some abilities and macros. So we'll go over the abilities first, all the key abilities you're going to need. So with Harbinger, Charged Blade obviously is key. That's going to make your slashing attacks do 20% more damage. Every time you use a slashing ability, however, it takes 5 charge. So this is where the charge management begins for this build. Introspection is nice to have on your bar just because in case you need to, if you're mana starved for some reason, which I have been mana starved with Harbinger before, mainly just fucking around, not really caring what I do, but, introspection's there in case you need to gain some mana back. Now, Blade Rush will be good for, basically charging in and dealing some damage, and it'll stun your enemy for 4 seconds. Blazing Light and Piercing Beam, these are your two main dots, with Blazing Light being 16 seconds and Piercing Beam being 30 seconds. Now, Piercing Beam does count as a slashing attack, so it will gain the bonus from Charged Blade as long as you have your Charged Blade up first, which I believe that's macroed in. We'll cover that soon. Lucent Slash, I know it's an AE ability, but you definitely need this because with one of your... let's see which one it was. I think it's this guy here, Rejuvenating Presence. It refreshes your Blazing Light, and it also spreads it up to 5 additional enemies when it hits the affected enemy. So that's definitely a must. So you have to have Lucent Slash on your bar and use it. Rending Slash is another key. So it's basically just an instant slashing attack, but it puts up to 3 stacks of rending on top of the enemy, and basically your damage is increased by 3% per stack, so maintaining 3 stacks of Rending Slash gives you an extra 9% of damage. Storm Slash, I don't think it's really used all that much because we've actually replaced, since the old build, Storm Slash has been replaced in the main spam macro with Rending Slash just to help maintain it. Now, Storm's Fury is a high-hitting melee slashing attack, so it's got a 6-second cooldown, so that's in the main spam. Tempest Winds is a huge damage dealing ability. You want to, if you're into min-maxing, you want to use this off a cooldown, and it's going to be in part of the opening rotation. So with that being said, that's how we're going to try it today. It requires a Harbinger weapon buff, which we'll go over shortly here, but keep this one on cooldown if you want to min-max your damage, and if you don't, make sure you're using it, obviously. Yeah, you should min-max with that. Vengeful Shock can only be used after an enemy dodges, blocks, or resists, and it deals a decent amount of damage. Also has a 10-second cooldown, so if they're blocking or dodging repeatedly, you can't just smash them with Vengeful Shock. Vorpal Slash is another somewhat heavy-hitting slashing attack, 8-second cooldown, and it deals 100% of its damage done over 8 seconds. So again, another dot. Make sure that's in your main spam. Condition Response is just a quick heal. I don't really care to use it all that much. You can macro this in because whenever the mage is critically hit, it resets, but only once every 5 seconds. So you can get some heals, but the heal is so minimal, it doesn't really, in my opinion, doesn't really make a difference. But if you're down to very low health and you're about to kill that boss, it might be a good idea to put it on your bar and just ensure that you live. Essence of Wind is just a increase your chance to dodge. It's a survival mechanic. It's no global cooldown, so you can mash that whenever, but beware, it does have a 45-second cooldown, lasts for 15 seconds. So not only do you increase your dodge, but you gain movement speed of 50%, so it's decent. The buffs we're going to be using for this is Eldritch Armor, and most of the time Reaper's Blade. Luminous Weapon you want to keep. As you see, I have it down on my bar here. Luminous Weapon is going to be for AoE. Reaper's Blade does a little bit of AoE, but not as much. But basically, the reason why we use this is it deals some decent damage, sort of like Lightning Charge or Lightning Blade, and attacks will actually heal you for a very minuscule amount, and then once you hit with this blade, any of your other attacks have a 30% chance to trigger the effect also, so they can kind of stack on top of each other. So blade mark is you mark one and then you mark the other, or you mark one actually, and then if you deal damage to another enemy, it deals damage to the marked enemy as well, but it reduces your damage by 10%. For AoE purposes, that's really good. Again, not going to cover this in this video. Distracting Slash is an interrupt. You definitely want that. Phase Step is kind of like another... basically, your next 3 single target damaging spells cast within 30 seconds will teleport you to the target of the spell. So Phase Step has changed. It used to make you teleport and deal damage up to 5 enemies, so you would kind of zip around and hit everything and then end up behind them. So that's definitely changed. Now you can use Phase Step However, in most cases, you don't really. Well, you do want to teleport to the enemy, but depends on the scenario. So use it at your own, with your own caution. Playing a retreat teleports you backwards, removes all crowd control effects, and Phantom Blades I actually put in the macro because in case of a disconnect, you still get to hit the enemy for up to 30 meters, just like if you were a caster. So on the Chloromancer tree, you can get Radiant Spores and Withering Vine. I don't really use it all that much for this build, though. There's just no time to. Vile Spores is going to be part of the Proc macro, which we'll go into soon. And Life-Giving Veil, you just want to put up because your attacks will heal you. Just, self-preservation, I guess. Stormcaller, Hailstorm is part of the proc macro also. It's big AoE damage, but it still does enough to be good for single target. We keep Ride the Wind on my bar to increase movement speed by 50%. Raging Storm, I haven't really found a good place to use this, but if you are at range and you need to deal damage, like let's say you got to run away out of an AoE, and then you don't want to lose DPS and not attack, so you can hit him with a Raging Storm and still deal a metric ass ton of damage with it. So Living Storm, again for AoE, I would personally dot them with it if you're single target because it still does damage pretty equivalent to what Blazing Light does. And that's about it for the skills. So now onto the macros. This is what your spam is. So you're basically going to have your Arcane Manipulation on yourself for that increased damage. Essence of the Wind and Phantom Blades in there just to increase everything, increase your range. You're going to have this not active syntax in the cast not active charge blade. That's going to automatically turn on Charged Blade when you're using this macro because it's all slashing attacks. So you definitely want that extra gain in DPS or damage done from Charged Blade. Now, there's an AoE macro. Same thing, that same Charged Blade, but with Lucent Slash. That's all the AoE is for this. And the whole point of this is, of Blazing Light, or Lucent Slash, I'm sorry. The whole point of Lucent Slash is to refresh your Blazing Light. Here's your Tempest Winds macro. Again, it's just Tempest Winds with Charged Blade to ensure that that's up. Your Proc macro has that same Charged Blade one. So basically what I'm trying to get at here is you want to maintain just about 100% uptime of Charged Blade, but there's going to be points where it turns off because you're out of charge and you're going to gain some. Now, most of your procs from the Eldritch armor, or the Eldritch buff, Eldritch armor, they're going to give you back charge in a decent amount, and this thing procs like mad, and you'll see that in a moment here. I put the dots together. It's not really recommended to put these dots together, but for the opening part of the fight, you're going to put, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to put Piercing Beam on, and the second thing you're going to do is Blazing Light. So for the purpose of this video, I put them together. This has a cancel buff Charged Blade also in there, so you want that Charged Blade turned off so that way when you put Piercing Beam up and Blazing Light up in the opening, you're not wasting that extra charge. Now, every time you apply Piercing Beam after that, you definitely want Piercing Beam to have that Charged Blade. So I suggest putting them on separate buttons, or at least keeping this macro the same except cutting out Blazing Light and putting that on a separate button. But I'm not going to worry about it for this video because I just need to get the point across. Now there is a charge gain macro, and what better to use than Rending Slash for that. So a cancel buff, Charge Blade, and cast Rending Slash. Basically, you use this instead of Storm Slash because Rending Slash you need to maintain the stacks. So you might as well do roughly about the same amount of damage and still maintain your 3 stacks. So, but that is, I believe, it. I mean, I got some useless Bloom macro here in a Radiant Spore. I think that's still for my solo build. Talking about the bar, your buffs that you're going to be using for this are Eldritch Armor and Living Veil. Life-Giving Veil. God, I cannot read today. And you're going to want to use the Eldritch Crystal with this, as well as a tablet, a seed, and a rune for the increase if you're into the min-max thing. You're going to want to have your Reaper's Blade up. Keep Luminous Weapon here just in case you need to switch to it when you go into AoE. Got Blade Rush up here, Arcane Manipulation in case I have to manually use it. My Interrupt and Ride the Wind. It's really all that matters. All this over here is just to watch cooldowns. Now, the placement of my things, remember I used to use the Razer Naga, now I'm using the 12 thumb button Logitech mouse. So I play probably a little differently than you're going to, unless you have the same thing, but my number 1 button is the main spam macro. My number 2 button is the proc macro. This is crucial you keep these together or somewhat close or somewhere really easy to hit because you're going to be going back and forth a lot between these two. Now I have the Lucent Slash macro here because I'm going to need to keep the Blazing Light debuff up on the enemy. I've got my Piercing Beam and Blazing Light for my opening, my Charge Gaining macro, which is just Rending Slash, my Tempest Winds, which is the huge damage dealer, and then Living Storm. And that's just about all you really need to run this. So now let's take a look into a basic rotation, and then we'll do a full speed and get some actual numbers out of this. Alright, so now I'm going to give you a little bit of a rundown on the K alerts. The K alerts really help. If I could type this in correctly, the K alerts really are going to help. We have one set for Blazing Light that basically just is a total countdown timer of the entire buff length, which is 16 seconds on the target, and shows when it's active. So that way you can watch the cooldown a lot easier than trying to find it up here in your buff bar or trying to watch it on my screen here in my custom buff bar. Same goes for Piercing Beam, except this is 30 seconds. We just want to monitor this and make sure that it's not going to fall off before we reapply it. Now I have a Rending Slash one, which is going to show a timer for how long Rending Slash is on. You should never really have to worry about this, but it's there just in case. Basically, in case you fuck up and have to reapply it manually with the Charge Gaining macro. Now, this Rending 3 is just more or less a symbol of the same type that's right next to the counter that's going to let me know that there's 3 stacks on the enemy. So if this is ever not there, then I know I need to get those 3 stacks back on immediately. So now actually I should show you the placement so you're prepared for it. So this is where all of them are placed. So the Blazing Light, Piercing Beam, the timer for Rending Slash, and then the 3 stacks. And I put a 3 in there so that way I know exactly what it means. Now the rotation goes like this. You're going to want to start with your Reaper's Blade, and you're going to put on your buffs, your Eldritch Armor, and your Life-Giving Veil. Make sure your Eldritch Crystal is on, and we're going to, slightly min-max with all these guys here. So, what you're going to start off with is basically your buffs, your debuffs on the enemy, which is Piercing Beam and Blazing Light. So we're going to go ahead and put those up. You'll see the K alerts go active. Then we're going to open with Tempest Winds, start that. And then we're going to go into the main spam. Keep spamming. You see the timer on Blazing Light almost gone, so hit that. It refreshes. Now this is your buff, or your proc. So you want to hit your proc every time that comes up. And as we keep going here, you're going to see that thing is going to pop up quite often. And now we're about time to refresh our dots. And you'll also note that the charge bar goes back up every time we use a proc, and Rending Slash is maintaining itself just within the main spam. Now, something I do want to note here is the fact that sometimes you get so many procs that Rending Slash will actually fall off because it doesn't have enough time within the main spam, or you're hitting more procs than you are the main spam, so you actually don't get that upkeep on it. So that's why the timer is there, so that way in case you have to hit your Rending Slash here and just maintain the stack, and you have 15 seconds to do so. But after everything, let's get back into the the way the rotation was here. So now by about this time, once you have your 3 stacks and everything is maintained, make sure everything, your blazing light is all maintained. After you maintain a blazing light, if your Tempest Winds is up, you're going to want to hit that, and you're just going to want to keep going strong just like that. So now that Rending Slash fell off because I'm going slow. Blazing light's falling off here, got it in time. That's pretty much it. So now Tempest Winds is about to come off cooldown, so we're just going to hold out until that timer on Blazing Light gets a little bit lower. We're going to hit that, and then immediately go into Tempest Winds. And that's how the rotation should look, basically in a nutshell. So now we're going to stop, we're going to get out of combat, and we're going to show you what an actual parse over about 2 minutes looks like. Alright, here we go. Let's see if I can do this. Been practicing all morning, so hopefully I don't mess this up. So enjoy, keep your eyes on the DPS meter here. You'll see some decent numbers. However, I will note, because I wasn't playing for a while, I'm still kind of in some cruddy gear. I don't have all the T2 stuff yet. Still some dungeon gear. No big deal. But at least you guys will have the rotation here down, and enjoy the parse. All those procs. There's another one. I wasn't kidding when I said that shit happens non-stop. Oh, little hiccup there. And look at that, whoops. Look at that Rending Slash maintaining itself. Now, if you ever run out of charge and things just aren't working, what you can do is just hit this charge gainer that'll maintain your Rending Slash. And you'll be able to basically maintain the Rending Slash for one and still do, you know, decent damage and gain a bunch of charge back. But you'll see I'm doing just fine without it. So a couple hiccups here and there, but we're basically killing, you know, 46.5 DPS, 46.5k. So it's not really terrible. Just make sure you use Tempest Winds at an ideal time where you know you're not going to have to refresh anything, you know, soon. And it'll all work out. Now we're at 47k. You can even add your Living Storm in there, you know, if you want. And a little bit rough, but we got up to 47.5 at about 3 minutes. So we're going to stop there, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this guide. I hope I did it well enough for you and, you know, went into enough detail. On the other hand, I hope it didn't take... What the hell is this? Hopefully it didn't take too long, but you guys should get the gist of Harbinger. And again, thanks to Hababa on the Rift forums. You can find this guide in the Mage Guide compendium, the Mage Guide compendium, and it's fairly simple. I'm not afraid of Harbinger anymore. I mean, not that I really was, but man, this shit used to be so confusing. So I hope this really helps people get into Harbinger and helps them play a spec that's up to date. And when I say up to date, I mean up to, you know, the proper damage parse for, you know, any raids or dungeons that you're trying to get into. So if you have any questions, please leave a comment, and don't forget to slap that like button and subscribe for some more videos. We've got some more Final Fantasy 14 and pretty quick here some Destiny and Black Ops 3 coming soon in the future. So thanks again for watching, and have an awesome day.